there guys, this is me, Malorian, and this is going to be a Warmachine 101. I haven't done these in a while. I really wanted this to be a weekly thing, but with, Mark II coming to a close, it really wasn't worth doing it. And now we're right into Mark III, and I wanted to jump into this with pretty much a review of everything that's changed in Mark III. So really, with this change here, I mean, you want to go through, read the rules, but one of these cheat sheets helps so much. And I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about like, oh, well, did this change? Did this? I mean, there's going to be a certain point where you need to go out there and check out the new cards. But one of the things I want to draw attention to here, and originally too, I was going to do a video talking about what you should do, that you should read over the rules, go over like kind of a summary of the changes, give you links, and then I realized you probably want me just to say it to you because let's be honest, it's a lot easier to just hear me tell you what the changes are as opposed to having to read it through. So I'm going to do that for you. What a nice guy I am. Anyway, where this comes from is from the Privateer Press forums, and this guy here is Debug. I'm going to give a link to this down here below anyway. Big tip of the hat to this guy for pointing this forward because this is amazing. This is what you want. You can go through and you can read all the rules and figure out all the changes, but sometimes you just miss stuff. And so something like this is fantastic just to make sure you caught everything, because sometimes you read through, it's like, oh, that's different, but if a rule completely disappears, you might just miss that. So I'm going to go through the summary of the changes, maybe give some thoughts on it too, and it should be hopefully educational. So the first thing, of course, is pre-measuring is a thing. We've known this for a while. I think it's a really good change. I could do a whole separate video on that, but pre-measuring for whatever you want. Within, this one was kind of dumb, where sometimes like when you're within this range, you get this bonus. And so the question was, well, is the caster in that range? And now it's like, yes, if it's within the distance of this caster, the caster's in that range, or the effect, or whatever it is, right? So a pretty simple thing there. Another one here is that the stat minimums is now set to 0, as opposed to before where some went to 5 or 1. I don't even really know what the implications for this is going to be, seriously. I mean, a lot of times you're brought down to those small levels. It was pretty much ridiculous anyway, so sure, they got a number for it. Another one here is just talking about how duplicate effects, how if you have something where, before, if you want to stop the opponent from putting blind onto your Colossal, you would blind your Colossal first because you can't have that stacking. Well, now that doesn't stop anything. It's like a separate new timer that's going on, and so like, hooray, you blind your Colossal, now I'm going to do it again anyway. So that silly thing's gone. Again, some of these changes, going to Mark III, they won't really affect people because it was a small corner case thing that, a lot of people didn't even get into. But there's one. Another one here is that whenever a model makes an action during their turn, it's now going to be called a combat action. Again, it's just a definition thing, no big problem. Some changes here. Abomination, just gone. With all the stuff with the command being gone, how can you have Abomination really doing very much? So they just got rid of that rule. Next one here, Amphibious. This one here, that if you're fully within the shallow water and you have the Amphibious rule, then you'll get concealment and you won't block line of sight. Again, I don't think this one will be a very big deal, even after the changes. I don't think you'll be seeing a lot of water on the board, so not really a huge change here. But again, it's something to keep in mind. Should have brought some water or something. There's a lot of these changes. Next one is going to be Assault. Now, a lot of these terms are now being said that they are advantages. Now, the difference of what an advantage is really where you have the little symbols on the card. Yeah, so instead of having a rule at the back, now it's called an advantage, and it'll just be that little circle there. So Assault is going to be one of those if you have one of those rules, and the biggest change here is that you only ignore the targeted melee bonus that they get, the +5 defense, if you actually get to them in melee. So all the stuff before where you'd have guys like charging from way out, failing the charge but making the assault shot, you can still do that. It's just if they're in melee and you're trying to get these free shots into melee, no. You're just going to be a high defense and you might be hitting your own guys. So there's a big thing there. Kalbarri, this one here completely changed, where before there's all these special rules, you had to go to the book and try to understand this. They've made a lot more simple now. So now it's just an advantage. Again, it's a little symbol there, and really there's no more light cav, there's nothing like that. It's just going to be down below. Anything with that advantage is going to be getting a few more of these different rules, and we'll get those down below. But again, you'll just be seeing that symbol, and whether you are a big heavy armor guy or on a little light horse with almost no armor, you are a guy and a horse, and you're going to have the same type of rules. So again, some simplification we're seeing here. Another one here is Commander. Again, with command stuff kind of being gone, why bother having a Commander rule? Isle of Sight, I love this change. So this one here, models with Isle of Sight no longer ignore forest when determining line of sight, and are now immune to the blind effect. The blind thing, sure, okay, that's cutesy, but not being able just to see through forest for no reason, I love it. It already happened in one game where a Scythian wanted to charge me, and I said, you can't see me, because you put him inside of a forest, which is fine because you have Pathfinder, but more than 3 inches, your Isle of Sight guy can't see through anymore. It's also a big thing for defensively, where now you can put your guys behind a forest, and those Ravagors can't just be cranking you no matter what, so really important change there, so something to keep in mind. Another one here is Flight. This is now an advantage, not a special rule. We have Fearless, removed from the game because it doesn't really do anything anymore. Gunfighter, so this one here is you can now make a gunfighter attack against a model engaging it, regardless of its own melee range. So that's kind of an interesting change there. Here's another one, Incorporeal. Incorporeal models cannot make free strikes. So the big one here is that before you might make a line of your little ghosts, and if somebody wanted to go through your Black Banes or whatever, well, okay, they'll take a free strike, not be incorporeal anymore, and then you'd be pushed back, and it was huge table denial. Now, you just can't do it. You just can't make a free strike, so if you want to run up there with your ghosts, go ahead. They can run right through you, no problem. So definitely that's a big one to keep in mind. Parry, that's now an advantage. You'll see as a symbol. Next one here, the rules were the same, of course. Soulless, turning into an advantage. The Standard Bearer, now this one here is now just a special rule. It says here not advantage. Yeah, because they're going to have to change what those Standard Bearers to do to make them actually worthwhile. But that's going to come to the actual models. I mean, of course, anyone that was just there before holding a banner to re-roll your command checks, well, now they'll have something else to make them a little bit better because there's no more command tests. Next thing, Terror, taken out of the game. Tough, no more tough when you're knocked down. And you know, this is coming from a guy that I run lots and lots of tough all the time. There were so models with tough, I'd span them all over the place, and even I will say it was ridiculous. Having all these guys, and sometimes, you know, I can roll a tough 6 times in a row, and it just completely changes the course of a game. So I think this is a fine rule. Tough is still a very powerful and difficult thing for your opponent to deal with, so I have no issues with this. Immunity Electricity, now if you have this, lightning never arcs to a model with immunity electricity. It's, you know, just a little simplification here. Jack Marshals. Now this is one that I can probably do a whole separate video on, but they changed big time. So before they kind of gave like a pseudo focus, which you could use to run or boost and do stuff like this. Well, now you basically go and give them one of 3 different commands. As long as their cortex isn't crippled and that you're not knocked down, then martial. But basically, or stationary, there's either crush, hurry, true strike, or sorry, strike true, or take aim. Now in crush, you get to make an additional melee attack, and you also get +2 to all your melee damage rolls. So it's basically like using that focus to get by an extra attack, but at the same time, it makes it a little bit more powerful, right? They get with +2 damage. Next one here is Hurry. This one here is where you get to run, charge, or make a power attack for free. So if you need to run up the first turn, and as well, to give a little bit of extra bonus, you get +2 to your charge and slam attack rolls. So, you know, giving a little bit more of a bonus there than before. Next one here is Strike True. This one is +2 to all attack rolls. Now this one's interesting because If you only had one melee weapon, it would have been better to have the boost and just say, hey, I'll boost this, because on average that's going to be adding, 3.5. So this one here is a little bit of a downgrade unless you have multiple attacks. Because then, if you have something with 2 initials, 3 initials, well, it's +2 to all of them. And so that makes up for that idea there. Next one here, or last one, is going to be take aim. So this one, you have to aim, and at the same time, you also get +2 to all your range damage rolls. So again, awesome for things for, say, like the hunter, where, okay, I'm going to aim anyway, and now I'll get +2 to my damage rolls. That's awesome. The problem, though, with this is that, of course, the boost would have been better. Again, if you have something that has multiple shots, then all of a sudden that's going to be worthwhile. Let's say, for example, if you are the Cyclone and you're shooting multiple things or something like that, then that's going to be better than a single boost. But even though after this we get to the battle engines, and with the battle engines, the serviceable rule has been removed. So now battle engines now have damage removed normally based on whether they are constructs, living, and undead. It was a weird rule before, but this can be fixed by this and not by that. Whatever. Now it gets fixed like anything else, so it's not that big of a deal. Next one, Kalbarri. So this is where we actually get to the rules of them. So what you get is you get boosted charge attack rolls. So before you get +2 for tall in the saddle, now when you charge, you just get a boosted attack roll, which is awesome. The other thing here is that, okay, if you are charging, you get to make an impact attack, and it's just like an extra attack. If you don't charge, you get to make a mount attack. So a little bit different here for those things, but again, it just makes things a lot easier than before, where there's really convoluted for all the rules, and it's just making this a lot easier now. Another thing here, you're going to see for all these guys with the Cavalries, they'll have all these reposition. So as before, they had kind of like the, what is it called? There's one where you can like go up, use part of your move, make an attack, and then you can move again. Well, now they just have reposition all the time. So this makes their game so much easier. Next one here is ranking officer. This one here, so if you have a ranking officer, he can't join a unit if that unit's already from you. Again, it's kind of a duh type thing. Next one here is shield guard. First of all, if you haven't seen, shield guard is now 3 inches, and as well, if you shield guard an AoE, the AoE actually now moves to the shield guard. Before, the AoE would stay where it was, and only that one direct hit would move to the shield guard. Now, the whole AoE moves over, which is going to be pretty important, actually. Next one here for some weapon stats. Melee weapon range. So now, whereas before you're either 0.5 or it was 2 inches with having reach, now there's 0.5 or 1 or 2, and it's all going to stay there in your melee range. So the whole idea of needing to have like a reach symbol doesn't matter anymore. That's removed because it actually says in the weapon what the distance it is. Next thing is rate of fire. So whereas before rate of fire meant you could buy up to that number of attacks, if you have a rate of fire 3, that just means you get 3 shots now. Next thing here is blessed. This is now going to be a weapon quality, not a special rule. Pretty much does the same thing. Chain weapon is now the same thing. They're calling it a weapon quality. This is basically like a new term, right? Just like how there's the advantage and stuff like that. It's just a new term where it's a weapon quality, not a special rule. Critical disruption, that's now going to be a weapon quality. So again, all this stuff, same thing. Damage type magical, your magical weapons you're going to see now are, it's a type. It's at a weapon quality again. And I can kind of skip the rest. These are all kind of saying the same things. Encounter levels. So with this one here, unspent army points. So before, you could just be 1 or 2 points down. Now it can be 5, which is, a little bit harder to make your list come to exact points because everything's doubled and you don't always have like that 1 or 2 point model to put in to finish that off. So now they're giving you up to 5 points down you can be. Of course you want to try not to be 5 points down, but that's the allowable amount you're allowed to not use up your points if you don't want to use them. Or maybe you're like Cephalix and you're having a hard time making the points work out. Something like that, right? Next one here. FAC limitations. So the character identity is now denoted by its stat profile name, found above the stat bar, followed by the numeral. So yeah, it's you're just going to see it up there where it's going to say it's a character. Pretty easy. Next thing here, talking about mercenaries, the packs and the charters, this is not really a thing anymore. The idea where this is highborn and this is Talion and this is whatever. It's mercenaries now. You're all mercenaries. Hooray, right? So if you want to put Kayazi with Forge Guard with whatever, yeah, that all works fine. And now they added in the partisans rule where something like Kayazi would be partisans to Khador, meaning they can work with Khador and they'd be counted as Khador. Same thing with the Precursor Knights. They'll be partisans Signar, and then they'd be counting as the Signar rules and stuff like that. Sorry. Next one is allies. But otherwise, it's pretty much all the same. I mean, the only real big difference I see here is that it specifically says whenever a character, or rather a caster, has a bond, even if normally that Jack couldn't be taken in that theme force, if you take it with that caster, the bonded Jack can come along with you. So it's just kind of like answering one of those weird things. You're like, okay, well, you know, there's this new tier, or rather there's like an old tier, and now there's a new bonded Jack that wasn't part of the plan before. Yeah, it works in there, no problem. We don't need a errata. Let's just use common sense. Another one here for setup deployment and victory conditions. Whereas before it actually stated in the Steamroller package that, you know, deployment was 7 and 10. Now that's just a standard thing, so it doesn't matter about the scenario package. They don't need to stay there anymore. That's just a basic thing that, okay guys, we're always going to have that. Let's just state it in the main rules. Another one here is in deployment steps. It actually just says, like, okay, first you do your regular deployment, and then you do your AD and stuff like this, and going back and forth. It's just kind of like having somewhere where it's stated, which is, you know, sure, why not? Another thing is also pre-deployment. That's gone. So whereas before you need to pre-deploy your big colossals and stuff, no. Now it's being deployed with the regular force. And I think that's, again, just making it a little bit more simple. I think originally they had pre-deploy so that you could see where the big colossal was and be able to plan against it. But for the most part, you knew where that colossal was. Plus, they want to make the colossals better because there are a lot of points. And having it so that their location is not pre-known is a little bit helpful. So going down here, the next thing we get into is more movement. Forfeiting movement is now just kind of a thing you can do, and it's now part of the rules. Aiming, you cannot aim when you're in melee, so makes sense. You know, sometimes you could like try, like the idea is like, well, what if I aimed, and if I have a guy that have like a melee attack and a range attack, I could like forfeit to aim, kill a guy with my melee attack, say like with a Holt, and then take a shot at somebody else. No, if you're in melee, you just can't aim. You're busy fighting, get over it. Next thing here is end of activation movement. It really just says if you have multiple things that happen at the end of your activation, whoever's turn it is gets to choose who does it first. So just again, trying to deal with one of those things where if you have multiple things that say it's at this point, what's the order, who picks, it's whoever's turn it is. Getting here now onto combat, we are saying that basic attacks are now normal attacks from Mark II. It's just kind of a name change. Skill checks, gone. You'll never have to kind of hope your guy rolls at 8 or lower anymore. That's completely taken out of the game. Automatic hits and misses. If you have something that automatically hits versus something that automatically misses, then that's going to mean that the automatically miss is going to just take precedence. It's just, again, if you have two things that are competing, now we have it actually stated that if the automatically miss is in there, it will overrule the automatic hit. Again, this will probably never come up, but if it does, there you go. Next thing here, we have backstrikes. So backstrikes were kind of weird before because you'd start moving some models and you'd ask yourself, like, did I start in his back arc? Now it doesn't matter. If your model gets to completely in the back arc, not just partially, all the way around, you get to count as a backstrike. So makes things a little bit more clear cut, and makes it so that before you're moving models, you're not trying to check these long little line of sight things with your laser and try and do that. Yeah, move your guys, get them where you can get them, and then it's going to be a lot easier when they're right base to base pretty much to see if you're in the back arc. Next one here, we are talking about the power attack types. So some of the things like the pushes and the headlocks and the weapon locks, those are all gone. For the slams, if you ever have a huge base that's slamming a smaller model, you'll get +2 for your distance slammed. So it's making the slams a little bit better. Sweep, whenever you're sweeping, you ignore intervening models. And that's kind of a weird thing before, where you could sometimes get things so clumped up. You're like, well, I'm sweeping through, but do I really see him? Now it's like, yes, you are just sweeping all of them, and it's going to hurt a lot. Next thing here is throw. There's no more type thing as like a one-handed throw and a two-handed throw. You pretty much just decide either you are throwing them away from you and it'll go that distance, or you're going to be throwing it at a model. And if you hit, there it is. The only time it's ever going to scatter is if you say, I'm aiming at that model, and then I miss. And then it'll scatter. So it makes things a lot easier, a lot more straightforward. If an arm is crippled, you don't then use it. So if you're trying to do a two-handed throw, well, it's just not even a two-handed throw. If you're trying to do a throw, and if you have two hands, hoping to get that extra dice, but one hand is crippled, now you only just get the one dice, right? So it's just makes a little bit more sense. Another one here is the trample. So now if you're trampling and you have a buckler or a shield, or you're going in shield wall, you're actually going to get those bonuses still. Another one here is going to be movement restrictions. So effects that prevent you from charging no longer automatically stop you from trampling or slamming. Those are now separate things. Plus, it's kind of gone anyway, right? The whole idea of, oh, you're -2 speed, so now you can't charge, they got rid of that anyway. So that's all kind of gone anyway. Elevation modifiers, you now have to be completely, well, okay, there's all this stuff where, okay, let me just read this and then I can talk about it after. The benefits and drawbacks of the benefits, here I am, just trying to read this important thing to you, and I'm just going to mumble my way through it. The benefits and drawbacks of elevation no longer require that the terrain be at least 1 inch higher than where the other model is standing. It must simply be considered elevated relative to that location. Elevated attackers no longer ignore equal or smaller based intervening models within 1 inch of their targets. So the big thing here is just the idea where we have 2D terrain now, and so with 2D terrain, it was a thing like, well, is that 2D terrain really an inch high? Well, come on, guys. There's a reason why we're using 2D terrain. Sure, in the rules it said things have to be an inch and all that stuff. Whatever. It's a hill. So if we all agree that it's elevated, it's all good to go. We already talked about the target and melee modifier. Then there's the Aoe Deviation. Deviating Aoe attack will stop at the table edge. Again, not really a big deal. I can't even think of one time where I shot an Aoe and like drifted off the table. So I'm sure it happened to somebody when you're trying to shoot a big blast at someone by the board edge. But again, this is very corner case. And if you're scattering off, I mean, it's, yeah, rare, but okay, something to keep in mind. Alright, getting here to the end of this now. Corpse tokens. Undead models now generate corpses by default, but not soul. Just kind of defining that, so you don't need to have separate rules defining it. Now it's just straight up corpse tokens comes from everything, and it's just the undead stuff doesn't have a soul. Healing is no more a rule. So healing can still happen, but now it's being termed differently where you're removing damage. So again, it's just a term change, so just keep that in mind. Some miscellaneous stuff here at the bottom. Cloud effects, you now have to be completely in the cloud to get any benefit from it, so keep that in mind. It's with this with a lot of things. You can't just toe in anymore. You have to be completely in to get that effect. Next one here is a knockdown model. It can be moved by a slam. Always it kind of made sense. Stationary. A stationary model cannot be used to channel spells. Makes sense. Next one here, falling. Okay, there's rules here for falling where, okay, the damage equals 2d6 plus 12 plus 1d6 per 2 inch fallen. nobody really deals with this falling rules. So if you're dealing with like this multi-layered building and guys are being slammed off and they're falling, okay, this rule will come into play. Otherwise, this is more here for your campaign games and stuff like that. And then finally, command tests, fleeing and rallying, all these have been removed from the game. So there you have it. Lots and lots of changes, and do know that when you go in there and you start playing your Mark III games, you're going to make mistakes. There's so much right now to be keeping in mind where the main rules have changed, the rules of your actual guys have changed, and, you know, the whole meta is going to change, and everyone's playing differently. There's jack spams, and there's this, and there's that. So realize that there's going to be some issues. One thing you might want to do is grab something like this, a summary sheet, and just print it off to have it with you. And then also have some humility. I mean, go into a game realizing that even if before you were the guy who won every game and knew every rule, the next 3 months is going to be an intense learning period where everyone's just trying to figure out what's going on, what they're going to do, and there's going to be mistakes made. So just have fun with it, guys. Again, now Warmachine 101 is back. I'm going to be having these every Friday. We're going to post up on the Facebook page, Mr. Malorian, and I'll just be asking what you guys want me to talk about. So looking forward to your questions there, and we'll catch you later. Bye.